Welcome back to Reading Bear. Today, we will take a look at some new revenge stories. And if you enjoyed my content, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel and post some bear emojis in the comments. Let's go!
The first one is titled, Half-Brothers Threaten to Sue Me Over 16K. It costs them $158K and possibly their parents' marriage. When I, 25 female, was 3, my grandparents passed away. They set up a savings account in my name. The account was meant to be accessed by me when I was 21. At that point it contained just over $300K. My grandparents left me a letter saying they would like me to share the money fairly with any other Smith-Jones children, meaning my full siblings. Dad's a Smith, Mum's a Jones. By fairly, they meant that they wanted me to assess the situation and judge for myself what was fair. I never had full siblings, but I have 2 half-brothers, Mac and Joe Smith, who are dad and stepmom's kids. Due to the specific wording my grandparents used, I legally never had to give Mac or Joe any money. However, I see Mac and Joe as my brothers, and as the money came from our grandparents, I felt that the fairest thing would be to assign each of us $100K, so we all got an equal-sized lump sum, and I figured that when Mac, the youngest, turned 21 and took his $100K, we could split any remaining money. When I turned 21, Dad suggested I buy a house with my $100K. I found a place I loved, but it was $130K and I couldn't get a mortgage, so Dad said I should borrow $30K from the account. I did, figuring I could pay it back before my brothers turned 21, and I have been repaying it. The account should be at $208K right now, but due to me withdrawing and then repaying that money, it's at $195K, so I still owe $13K. Joe turned 21 recently, and as I was giving him his $100K, Joe noticed that there was less in the account than there should be. I explained and said I was going to put it all back before Mac, now 19, turns 21. Joe told Mac, and both boys said I stole from them and owed them the full $13K back plus $3,000 of interest that they felt they would have gotten, and they wanted it all paid by this summer, which gave me less than 6 months to bring the account up to $211K. I said I'd do it, but over 2 years as planned. The boys then wrote up a contract to that effect. I went to sign it, until I saw that it said 6 months to pay it all back. I wouldn't sign as we agreed on 2 years. They said I should figure it out as they were entitled to that money and would be seeking legal advice. Later that day I got an email, clearly written by them, saying that they intend to sue me for the $16K. Plus whatever is currently in the account, and additional damages and emotional distress on top of that. At this point in time, I'd given Joe about $50K of his $100K, because he wanted it in installments. I responded that legally, they were never entitled to any of it, and given their attitudes, I'd say they've already received an amount I deem fair, so that $50K was all they were getting. I then got a barrage of texts, calls, and emails yelling at me for going back on our deal. I blocked them. They then took to social media, saying that I was trying to screw them out of their inheritance and rallying our extended family into harassing me over this, and it mostly worked as a lot of people messaged me. However, I got a message from this guy called Chris Smith. Chris said he was 27, and claimed to be my half-brother. I had never met him before, but he sent me photos of him as a kid with our dad, grandparents, and me. He showed me that he also had an account with $150K in it, and a scan of a letter from our grandparents, saying this money was meant to be shared fairly among Dad's illegitimate children. Chris also told me we have another half-sibling, who is 18. He'd been looking for me for a while, but only found me when Dad shared Joe's post which had me tagged. We checked with a solicitor to make sure, and as the boys are legitimate, they aren't entitled to anything in Chris' illegitimate kid fund, and as they are my half-siblings, they aren't entitled to anything in my Smith-Jones kids fund, either. I sent the boys a letter formally telling them to back off, stop posting about me online, and enjoy the $50K because it's all they're getting. The day they received the letter, Chris got a PM from Dad, asking if the boys can have some of Chris' fund. Chris also said no, and told Dad we'd met. I told Mac and Joe about Chris and our other half-sibling, with Chris' permission. So it looks like my grandparents, knowing about Chris before they passed, set up 2 funds. One for the kids Dad had with my mother, who was still his wife when they passed, and one for children born out of Dad's affairs, presumably to make sure no one tried to screw anyone else over out of hurt feelings. I'm getting a lot of crap, but holding firm on my decision. The boys have realized that I won't back down on this, and it sounds like I've caused a schism at their house, as Joe has all the money and no intention of sharing, so Mac is now feeling twice as screwed. Plus stepmom apparently did not know about the other half-siblings, or that my half-sister was born after she and Dad got married, and she's made Dad move into a hotel. It sounds like Dad is looking for a long-term living arrangement outside of the family home, because it looks like she is not letting him move back in. Dad is begging me to reconsider, but honestly I'm done with all of them except Chris and my sister. The next one is titled, "They Blamed Me for Stealing, All I Did Was Prove Them Wrong." So after finishing a design program in school, I quit my temp job in financial services and started to focus on design. A couple of friends were at a small events company that also had their own TV show, a video game, and lifestyle TV show, and they needed someone to help out on the show and do some of the other design work around the studio so that they could focus on pre-production. Sounded amazing, so I went into their offices, sat with them for a chat and started the same day. At first, all was good. The boss seemed okay. He asked me to get a coffee with him, let's call him Drake, and kind of probed my background. I went to film school, worked as a camera assist and dropped for a while before switching my focus to motion design and 3D. This set off a light bulb in his head and had me doing pre-production on the show. I brought in a friend to help produce and everything went forward. I worked on the show for about a year and a half. The show itself was fun. I got flown to E3, PAX and pretty much every major local gaming and cosplay expo. Worked with a bunch of famous cosplayers and minor expo celebrities and had a great time doing it. But during all this, I saw Drake slowly push me, making jokes about me and the producer, inappropriate comments about our personal lives, angry outbursts for no real reason, the inability to reason or compromise, and later, saw how dodgy the business was. Getting quotes from suppliers and then in the middle of the project calling and demanding they lower their quote or not be paid. Making behind-the-scenes deals with sponsors of the show to take marketing budgets, put it into the show, but then split the money with the marketing manager who made the deal. Taking prizes that were intended as giveaways for the show and just selling the product on eBay to line his pockets. All the while, I figured, I've been here a while, I see him burn people every day, but surely it won't happen to me. He owes me more than that. I'm making this show for him, did the title sequence, the graphics package, secured sponsors, and organized social media, shot the show, edited, mastered and delivered. Oh, how wrong I was. Things started getting worse, a bunch of big events were happening, and in addition to the show, I had to help out with the events work. I was burnt out but had a trip coming up, so had to stick it out until it was all paid for and over. I had already decided I was going to leave for my trip and not return to the company. In the weeks before my leave, the major event happened, and during the event, something with some location audio went wrong. It didn't really have anything to do with me, but he grabbed me by the collar and told me if I didn't fix it he would kill me. That was my whoa moment. This guy is actually a sociopath. I figured I needed to take some precautions to protect myself, as I still had a week until I'd be leaving and then I was out. I started by packing all of my gear at the studio and getting it out of there. Each day I'd stay back late and pack as much as I could. By this point, the whole show was operating on my equipment, my camera, my lenses, my sound equipment, my raids, my software licenses. So I got that all out. I then backed up every piece of correspondence I had from him, all my invoice emails, any requests in writing, any receipts, etc. I got my last invoice in, and let him know that I was off and would see him when I got back. Again, no plans of going back, but best to keep that from him until my invoices were paid out. On the day of my flight, he called me 5 or 6 times asking about footage from the major event. It was all stored on my drive but wasn't scheduled to be cut down until well after my return. This was an insurance policy. Technically I signed no contract with him, so I owned that footage. I called him and said it's not scheduled to be cut down yet, but it's on the server, knowing he wouldn't know how to check that anyway. A week into my trip, I sent an email asking why my invoices hadn't been paid yet. I had previously asked that they are prioritized given my holiday, and he agreed. I was met with an email from the troll he hired as an events coordinator, but really she was just the receptionist with a fancy title. She stated that there was an ongoing police investigation, as I had clearly robbed the office before leaving. All of the equipment was missing, drives, footage erased from the server, not true, etc. She included a police event number and said if I didn't return all equipment and pay the company $5,000, they would be pressing charges against me. I laughed and fired back that all of the missing equipment is mine, but I'm happy to look over any receipts they have for it. I immediately called the police and gave the officer the event number and asked what was going on. She explained that a woman, the office troll, came in and made claims that I had stolen from the business but had no evidence and was advised she would need to provide proof, but never returned to do so. I told her about them demanding I pay up $5,000 or they'd press charges. The police officer took a statement from me in case it went further, as this was a clear case of extortion. I just wanted out, and they were willing to go to these lengths to weasel me out of the money I earned killing myself for them? I was upset, to say the least. And I knew enough about their business to destroy them. Step 1. I immediately sent my unpaid invoices to a collections agency. They straightaway fired off a letter of demand, which informed Drake of my desire to seek the unpaid invoices as well as legal costs should it come to that via the legal system. I got all of those backed up emails together that prove I was working on the days I invoiced them, and since my invoices are itemized by project, those emails should match with the specific projects I was working on. Step 2. I start hitting him where it hurts. For starters, their only software licenses were mine. Prior to my arrival, they were operating entirely on pirated software. I didn't touch any of their software while doing work for them. 3D was handled on my own machines. We started doing post in the Creative Cloud and I left their pirated FCP licenses alone. So aside from uninstalling my own software and plugins from their machines, everything was back to the way it was before I left. So I reported his company to the BSA, the Software Alliance, and was surprised when I heard back immediately. Drake was running 5 or so edit suites with pirated copies of Creative Suite, FCP, Microsoft Office, Maya, 3ds Max, etc. A lot of expensive software. The guy who emailed me back asked if he could call me and basically told me that they often have no way of knowing if a company is using pirated software, so they really rely on tips such as mine to go after companies. I forwarded him emails where I had advised Drake that we needed a specific piece of software and the cost involved, and his responses where he would CC me in and ask the IT guy to pirate the software. This was pretty much all they needed to fully implicate Drake. The guy then asked me to let them know how many computers were in the office, and I provided him with a map of Drake's office, with locations for each computer and the server, and a list of all software on each machine. Really easy to get this, as I still had access to their servers and could remote into each computer. Step 3. I discredit the business. I put out some business reviews on Google so that people would know what kind of shady operation Drake is running. I filed a copyright claim against their show reel, since the entire reel was made up of projects I did for them and I never signed over those rights. I commandeered a web player service they were using to host and monetize the TV show and removed each episode and deleted the account. I took over their Twitter page and posted info about how the company would rip off clients. I emailed a couple of major games expos who he had partnered with for both the events and TV show and let them know about how he would regularly have me alter footage to make it appear as though he was delivering on contractual obligations. Comp in Twitch.tv logos to make it seem like he was live streaming events, add banners where there weren't any, etc. Minor things, but things these companies were paying him to do. I even adjusted the About Me part of the website. And it wasn't very flattering. Now I still had a friend working there, so was informed of every reaction. Every time he shouted my name in anger, I knew about it. The BSA fined him over $60,000. When Drake heard the news, he threw his iPhone against the glass wall in his office, smashing it. I received a very nice reward for turning him in. He held out on paying my invoices until the very end, sending threatening emails the whole time and demanding that I pay him money for the trouble I've put him through. It went to court. I didn't need to attend. I won the entirety of my invoices as well as the cost of taking him to court. He basically paid for me to sue him. That year was the last year for the show. Likely had trouble getting sponsors after I emailed all of them about the way he was selling prizes on eBay and sent them a link to his eBay store page. He also no longer had involvement in some of the major gaming expos he'd previously done events work for. Those 2 losses would have cost him a few $100,000 a year. The page on the website was up for months. When he found it, he again smashed his phone. This time though, he didn't have a glass wall to break, as he had to move out of the very nice office with water views to a small shitty office in a strip mall. I think he was having financial difficulties. It was on this night that he drunk called me and threatened to kill me. I celebrated his call by deleting all of the footage I had taken of that major event. The budget for the event was over $1 million, and a lot of that footage was the only proof he had even done the event. 5 camera operators footage, crane footage, drone footage of the venue, all recorded sound from MICS, all gone. Knowing he'd never be able to get that back was great. Plus his threatening phone call along with the extortion attempts that were on file were enough to get a restraining order put out against him. And I cannot wait until he inevitably messes up and tries to do something again. The next one is titled, Tough Luck, My Friend. I had someone park in my assigned covered space at midnight on a Saturday. This has happened more than once. One time, I called management to have them towed. Management tells me they don't tow anymore because they would have to pay because it was private property, so, tough luck. I parked behind them and blocked them in. There was a block wall in front. I left the neighbors each a note on their door letting them know if they needed to leave. Knock on my door. At 10 a.m., frantic pounding on my door, me in pajamas, some girl hysterical that she had to go to work and was going to lose her job. I asked her if she knew it was reserved parking. She said yes, it was midnight and there were no other parking spaces and she didn't want to street park and walk because it wasn't safe. I asked her why she was okay with making me park on the street and walk after midnight. She told me she was going to have me towed. I laughed and went back to bed. The management called me to tell me I am blocking someone in and if I don't move, they will have me towed. I relate the conversation from the middle of the night, the tough luck part, and told them if they tow me instead of the violator in my spot, I am going to sue them for failing to enforce the rules, endangering my safety because the reason I parked that way was because it was after midnight and everyone knows it is not safe to park on the street and walk. I offer to wait for the tow truck then move so they can tow the parking violator. The management told the girl, tough luck. She is back pounding on my door and screaming. People are now calling management about the lunatic trying to break into someone's apartment. The guy she banged the night before shows up to my door. The girl is at the bottom of the stairs crying so hard she has the hiccups. The guy apologizes profusely, said he didn't know she parked in my spot. He apologized again and offered me money for my trouble. I told him that wasn't necessary, I was just waiting for the girl to apologize. He nodded, went downstairs, yelled at her and pointed up to me. She came upstairs and apologized and I moved my car. The next one is titled, The Real Genius. My brother bought a house in an Hoa area, however, he never signed up. This was a very new cookie-cutter neighborhood. The neighbors and the Hoa were extremely rude and nosy. He basically bought the place partially finished so he could finish it himself to create value before selling it. During this time, they would spy on him, call the cops on him, and just act like petty fools, so he checked the Hoa rules and found they had very strict conformity rules for the neighborhood. He decided to get revenge by doing things that added value that would cost everyone else, like putting in trees and other nice landscaping. His neighbors had no choice but to conform to what he was doing. He did something, and a few days to a week later everyone else followed suit. In the end, his landscaping and remodeling of the house increased the value of his home by a decent margin beyond the original plan. He said that in the end everyone really hated him, and was surprised that no one marched on his home with pitchforks, but in the end, he didn't care. He said if the Hoa was smart enough they could have changed the rules at the first sign of trouble anyway. He was so glad to sell the place and move on. He now has a large ranch home far, far away from anyone. The last one is titled, Strategic Planning, Major Payoff. When I was 21, I had just moved to a new city into a townhome-style apartment with some friends of mine. We all had jobs at a tire factory and as such work shift work. When we moved in, we were given very explicit parking spots that were conveniently unmarked. These parking spots were not in front of our townhouse, they were a few buildings down. Fast forward a few months, the king of prick moves in a few doors down from us, right by our parking spots. This guy was a real piece of work. I overheard him making fun of our neighbor's daughter who has cerebral palsy. He was saying something about how it must suck to be ugly and knowing nobody would ever want to touch you. Anyway, my roommates and I were working nights one time from 7 p.m. to 7:30 a.m., so we generally slept the days away. It was early spring, all the snow was melting, and the city issued some signs saying that the streets had to be cleared on whatever day they could clean the gravel, rocks, garbage from the winter months. Our parking spots weren't on the street, they were in a parking lot place off the street. So we parked and went to sleep like normal. We wake up, go to do our regular routine, and boom, vehicles are all gone. We do some calling around and find out they were towed. So we go through this hassle of finding a way down there, paying the fees, and getting our vehicles back. Between the cab rides, tow fees, tickets, and a few missed work hours, this ended up costing us about $500 each. Our horrible neighbor ends up telling us in passing the next day how he forgot to move his cars. So, he called the cops and reported that he couldn't park off the street because somebody was illegally parked in his spot. The police ran our plates, got our address, and apparently tried ringing the doorbell, which none of us heard because we were sleeping. I'm not sure about my roommates, but I was still adjusting to shift work and slept with my AC on plus earplugs. So yeah, we were pretty mad about all of this. We had a few conversations on how we could get back at the neighbor. One night, we came up with this: the neighbor had a pretty decent girlfriend. I'm not really sure why she was with him, maybe he was nice to people that slept with him. Regardless, we followed his schedule for a while. His girlfriend was out of the house at the same times on the same days, working, Tuesday to Saturday, 8 to 4:30. It helped that I worked with this chick at Future Shop to know her schedule. We staged a few fake pizza deliveries, and this dude never answered the door if she was home. Easy enough. So one Monday that summer, we called a working girl. We told this chick exactly what to say in any situation. Took about 2 hours of coaching and going through mock situations, but it played out flawlessly. It did cost us $100 an hour for 3 hours. We sent her over there, she knocked, the girlfriend opened the door. The working girl, with a stunned look, said, "Oh no, is Tuesday tomorrow?" The girlfriend then started questioning why some chick is coming around, but we gave this girl answers to everything. She started talking about how she's been coming every Tuesday for months. Things start getting louder. The neighbor was at the door at this point, saying stuff like, "Baby, I have no idea what she's talking about." Then the kill shot. The girl starts talking about dates she came over, that girlfriend was out of town, nothing a random person would know. After they started yelling at each other, the girl we paid took off. There's no way any person would admit to seeing a working girl every day for months, so he was pretty much ruined. They were yelling at each other for a good 10 minutes before they took it indoors. She moved out by Friday. Mission accomplished. Thanks for listening.